This flight is just a quick 35-mile repositioning from Edinburgh to Glasgow without any passengers on board. A good opportunity to get you checked out on the Bombardier CRJ700. While we're waiting in line for takeoff, I'll explain a few things. Flying a modern jet isn't really all that different from flying a small prop plane. There are just a handful of key differences. The first thing you'll notice is how different the instrument panel looks. Instead of many small, round mechanical instruments, there are just a few large computer screens. Most of the information is the same, but the presentation is different.
Bob travel 221, hold short runway 6 right, traffic is a 747 and final.
Holding short 6 right, world travel 221.
That call was for another aircraft. We're Orbit 526. I'll handle the radios during this flight, so don't worry if you miss anything. I'll tell you what to do. The display on the left is the primary flight display, or PFD. It combines multiple instruments into one display. The blue and brown section in the middle of the PFD is an attitude indicator. The vertical tape on the left side shows airspeed, and the tape on the right side shows altitude. At the bottom in the middle is a horizontal situation indicator, which shows heading, and to the right of that is a vertical speed indicator. Glass displays like these take some time to get used to, but once you get the hang of it, you'll love them. The display to the right of the PFD is the navigation display, which shows a top-down view of the aircraft's position relative to navigational aids and the flight planned route. You can change how the map looks by using the format and range knobs on the left side of the panel. Try it now if you want to. Once we reach 1,000 feet above the runway, I'll tell you to pitch down to 10 degrees nose up and to raise the flaps so we can accelerate. Our initial climb will be to our cruise altitude of 6,000 feet, and the departure controller will probably tell us to make a left turn to the west. I'll let you know when to turn.
Orbit 526, winds are calm, runway 6 right, cleared for takeoff.
Cleared for takeoff, Orbit 526. All right, we're cleared to go. When you're ready, use the throttle lever on your joystick or press the F3 key to add thrust. Start with 50% N1. Let the engine stabilize and then increase thrust to 100%. Knots. V1. Rotate. Slowly pitch up to 15 degrees. V2. Positive rate, gear up. Raise the landing gear by pressing the G key.
Orbit 526, contact departure.
Orbit 526, switching. Okay, move the stick to adjust pitch to 10 degrees nose up on the primary flight display, and raise the flaps. Reduce thrust to about 80% N1 to keep our speed below 250 knots. Climb and maintain 6,000 feet. Edinburgh departure, Orbit 526 with you, climbing to 6,000.
Orbit 526, roger. Orbit 526, turn left, heading 270.
Left to 270, Orbit 526. Okay, it's time for the turn. Make a nice easy left turn until our heading is 270 degrees. That's due west. Level off at 6,000 feet and reduce thrust to about 60% N1. That should give us about 250 knots. Let's run through the after takeoff checklist. Landing gear, up. We'll stay low on this short flight, so don't exceed 250 knots and keep the landing lights on. This is standard practice below 10,000 feet. Flaps, up. We're above our assigned altitude. Descend to 6,000 feet.
Orbit 526, resume own navigation.
Don't exceed 250 knots below 10,000 feet. Thrust set to 80% N1 for the climb. After takeoff checklist complete. Resume own navigation, Orbit 526. All right, we've been told to resume our own navigation. This means the controller will no longer be giving us vectors, and we should follow our filed flight plan. Our flight plan route takes us to a point that will line us up for an approach to Glasgow's runway 23, which is currently the active runway. You can use the mission compass to navigate to that point, or you can follow our flight plan on the map page of the navigation display. The pink line on the screen is the path we should be following. F7 twice to lower the flaps to 8 degrees. The flaps will slow us down, so bring the thrust back up to about 60% N1, so we maintain 180 knots. Okay, level off here at 3,000 feet, and bring the thrust back up to about 50% N1 to maintain 210 knots.
Orbit 526, contact tower on 118.8.
Switching to tower now, Orbit 526. Thanks. Glasgow Tower, Orbit 526 with you on the visual approach for runway 23.
Orbit 526, Glasgow Tower, you're number 1. Cleared to land, runway 23. Wind calm.
Clear to land, Orbit 526. We're cleared to land, so let's run through the before landing checklist. It's a short one. Landing gear, down. Flaps, set to 45 degrees. Landing checklist complete. Continue descending. Once we're about 50 feet over the runway, reduce thrust to idle and pull back on the stick slightly to touch down on the main wheels first. Then slowly lower the nose.
Sink rate. Sink rate. Sink rate. Sink rate.
Nice landing.
Orbit 526, turn left next taxiway and contact ground on 121.7.
Ground on 121.7, Orbit 526. Turn left on the next taxiway. Once you're clear of the runway, stop, retract the flaps, and turn off the landing lights. You're over-controlling. Use less pressure on the stick. You're over-controlling. Use less pressure on the stick. Stop here. Excellent job.